Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at yegfitness. Today's podcast interview is with Kay Lybeck. She has been a teacher, she's a mother, she's an athlete, she's an author. I hope that you enjoy this episode. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and thank you for listening. Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase, episode 121. I am joined by Kay Lybeck. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too shabby. Tell me something cool that's happened in the last week, if you can think of something.
Um, Something cool in the last week would probably just be that I have two teenagers who are home due to current circumstances. And so we have been in the backyard trying to come up with interesting, fun things to do within we have a small backyard. So we have a couple of yoga balls, we have a pull-up bar. So we've been doing yoga ball tricks and just trying to break up the days with something a little more fun.
So, what was your first thoughts when everything changed with the pandemic and having to shift life around and having to come up with fun things to do, like with limited resources? Because I know a lot of people will be able to relate to that scenario.
Um, yes, my teenagers can spend a lot of time in their bedrooms. So, and especially now that their school is online. So it's tricky to figure out if they're online for school or if they're online for fun and video games and such. So I think my worry is always that they're breaking their day up into parts and that we see each other and that they're not spending too much time. They're doing time management. So I think as a parent, I want to help them develop that skill on their own so that when they leave the house in a few years, they'll have that time management and be able to think of different things to do, even when they're just at home, to break up the day.
I like that. If you were to describe yourself to my audience as like describing yourself in the ways that you are most proud of yourself, the things that you take the most pride in, like who are you? Like what do you do? What is your purpose and such?
Um, that's a tough one. I'd say, as a family member, I'm a mom, I'm a caregiver. Um, Helping them develop into the best that they can become while they're here with me is probably my number one at the moment. I think overall, I probably am a caregiver since I became a teacher, and I just want to help people become the best that they can, to believe in themselves. Um, so I think that's my number one role.
Yeah, I like that.
Never.
When it comes to being a teacher, what was the thing that introduced you to being a teacher?
It would be my mom. She was a teacher. And so I'd hear a lot of her stories about teaching, and she'd mostly share the fun ones. And so it just seemed like, man, what a great job. I'm not at a desk. I'm with children. I get to have fun. And children are filled with wonder and excitement. And there's so much joy there that it just seemed like a great place to go and be. And I loved school growing up. So it was a place for me that I loved to learn and I loved to be in the classroom. So,
What was your favorite subject as a student?
ooh, I would say probably writing, although I really didn't enjoy the assignments, but maybe I liked the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is it about the process that makes it so special for you?
I think when you do a written piece, there's the revision of it, and that same process of going over and over it. So by the time that you hand it in or turn it in, you have it feels like it's more like a part of you, like there's some piece of you in there that you're getting to share, that if you hadn't written it out and revised it and went over it, that piece wouldn't be there. So I think it was a sharing, even though I don't think I saw it that way then. I think it was a, wow, I'm turning something in that is a little bit of me.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I've seen how it's sort of transformed because like you've created at least one book so far. Like I've seen the book that you've shared on your Instagram, and I like how you describe it as being something that can be relatable, something that can help kids and stuff like that. What inspired you to create that in the first place? What was the moment in which you're like, okay, I'm gonna make this book. This is what I'm gonna do.
That was kind of a long, uh, surprising journey. I never had a book in my mind at all, but like you said, I feel the power of stories and the power of sharing a story. And I had come up with this story with this dog character based off of my real life, and I was telling the story in a class that I was giving, and then I made it into a like little puppet show with paper figures, and then and the story seemed to resonate. The children seemed to connect to it. And so I thought, well, I want to try and reach as many children as I can. So that's when I actually wrote it down. And then slowly it just turned into, well, maybe it could be a book. Why could it not be a book? And then so self-published it and went from there. So yeah, right before the pandemic, I was just getting into the classroom for author visits. So it had been 15 years since I'd been in the classroom because I'd been at home with my own children. So that was really exciting, and the chance to share the book with them. And yeah, it was going in a good direction. So yeah, it
Well,
was
I
really fun.
mean, life is kind of crazy in the way that we think that we're going in a good direction and it stops, but truly we never
Yeah.
stop going in a good direction. It just looks different. So,
Yeah.
what have you learned in this period of self-reflection? Like, I know a lot of people have found out a lot of things about themselves with their lifestyle changing and everything changing. What have been your major takeaways in the last couple months?
I think a major one is I keep coming back to circles. I see things in a lot of shapes and colors, and um, like you said, it felt like everything was kind of going in the right direction before the pandemic. And then I had a period there where I was like, you know, lost direction. Like, now what am I going to do? And then after a few weeks, one of my difficulties originally was getting into the schools, getting back in. And now the children are out of the schools. So oddly, I was like, wow, they're now I'm back to where they're at home, and maybe I can reach them in a different way that I was trying to reach them originally, but I couldn't. So shifting to, okay, maybe I need to do something online. But I think the biggest takeaway was these circles. A reason that I think I like teaching is how it expands. Each year they add on. So in kindergarten, you start at the center and they're learning to communicate and cooperate and share. And it's all these basic, seemingly simple but strong character development. And then you slowly expand that. First grade, they expand to their community in the school, then they expand to the neighborhood, and then they expand to the city, nation, world. And I felt like I sucked back into that center and was reminded that right there, that center, that character development, that cooperation, that's the lesson. You just have to expand it to a larger group. So now we're looking at the greater good, but we're doing it from our center of ourselves.
I like that analogy. Something that I experience sometimes is like I'll kind of see things in such a way as that, just the greater good, and like seeing like a process, trusting the process, but then it just doesn't seem like the world is going my way. Have you ever found yourself in a scenario like that?
Yes, yes, that was a huge struggle when I first started. So I've been at home with my children, and I want to go back to some sort of work because they're teenagers, but I wasn't sure I wanted to go back into the regular classroom setting. So my favorite part of being a teacher was the building a community, like the excitement of us being in that classroom, growing and learning together and knowing each other and appreciating all our differences and all that. And so I thought, well, I can develop something where I'm just focusing on my favorite part of teaching, and I don't have to teach math or what have you. So uh, but my struggle was that uh, people weren't seeing, to me it felt like parents and people weren't seeing the importance of that, of developing that, of directly teaching that, not hoping that the children will pick it up from playing in group sports or pick it up from watching their family members, but directly talking about all those words about growth and resilience and cooperation and connection. So they were too big. They couldn't find, I felt like I couldn't go forward with my class because there wasn't time for that topic. Because, grades are number one, and then being on sports. And so that was a huge struggle for me to figure out how
Well,
to go around.
you really got me thinking because I'm on the same page. I mean, I think there's a lot, and I think I've seen a lot of my friends who are parents like see that with their kids, and that this is a great opportunity to instill those characteristics like resilience and just these other things that aren't the paper grades, and they aren't the things that you can see in a yearbook or see on credentials, but they're like really important to life. Like when life knocks you
Right,
down, how do you get back up? Or when you need help, like how do you call upon people? How do you make really genuine high quality connections with people in your life? When it
right.
comes to connection, how would you define connection in your own words?
Oh, I think connection for me today is realizing, knowing that we all share a process of becoming whoever it is we want to become, that we all have struggles. I think, social media a lot of times helps, makes us think everything needs to be perfect and that these wonderful things just happen to people. But if we have this connection to the process and the connection that we all share that process, then there's comfort in that. And that connection helps us continue on our own journey and helps us feel for others as well.
I like how you speak about empathy, like not directly, but just feeling for others and expressing empathy. And I think that's such an important characteristic for people. When is a time that you can recall, if at all, that in your life someone has expressed like really memorable empathy towards you? And what was that experience like?
Um, I would say through my weightlifting, CrossFit slash weightlifting journey, was where I really connected with that, where I really felt like somebody understood what I was going through. And even though, sometimes you think uh, weightlifting or sports seems like a silly place to have empathy because it's just sports, it's not. But that's where through that, I learned my strongest lessons, I think, about um, feeling and empathy and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and knowing that even, the top level athletes share that same journey with you, and they can, even though we're totally on different expertise levels, that we still struggle with the same things.
Can you
And I
think
think I
of
have some coaches who helped me to see that.
Can you think of like the first moment when it was just like, wow, like we are all in kind of the same world, the same position, thinking the same ways, just in different places in our journey?
Um, I don't know if there's one specific moment that comes to mind. I think, well, I don't know. I would say when I was 12, we were hit by a drunk driver, my whole family, when we were on vacation. And so um, that was traumatic. But I always had wondered about the drunk driver who hit us. And I never knew who he was, but I always realized, I think, even at that young age, but more so as I aged, that the choice he made was just a tiny choice that impacted all of us and impacted him. And I always hope that it impacted his life in a positive way, and that it didn't make it worse. And there is sorry, probably growing up, there's a guilt to feel for somebody who hurt you. But I don't know that I connected with him. So,
Yeah, I mean that's such a powerful way to see things, and I think it honestly, people talk about strength and how strength is expressed. I believe strength is expressed in our ability to show emotion. When we are sad or feeling just emotion of any capacity, to express that quite genuinely is a sign of strength. And like, so for if you saw like a 300-pound power lifter walk into the gym and it looks like he could move a house, but he happens to show emotion over his kids or over something he's passionate about, is not necessarily a sign of weakness. It's a sign of something being so deeply meaningful to him, and it's shows his strength, as it were. So I think it's good that you express that, because it's like everybody's going to be finding themselves in someone else's shoes. It's not too dissimilar to your what you've talked about, like even on your Instagram profile with writing, and like we're creating moments for people to relate to. We are finding these connection pieces. We're enabling other people to be more resilient through the stories of others. And so for someone to be able to relate to anybody else's situation, it's not too different than in our current times when we look out and we see like, yeah, like our lives are a little off, but like just imagine being in someone else's shoes. I think about how like my employment dynamics are a little different with gyms closed. I am a trainer. That's what I do. But then it's like, yeah, but there's other people that have it way worse. I think about people with family in the hospital. I think about people without a home. I think about people who don't have like any means to get by. I mean, it's crazy, and empathy is such a powerful thing. So I really liked how you expressed that. Um, Getting back onto like, I'm curious about your fitness journey. You talked about weightlifting. You talked about CrossFit. what introduced you to that in the very first place?
I was always in sports growing up, um, tennis and running. So I played tennis in college, and then after college, just went into running because you can do that after work and with friends, and just ran forever, just road running. And then when I had my children, I pushed them in the double stroller and all that. And I did a run with my husband that's called the Hood to Coast here in Portland, where it's a team relay run, and you start at the top of Mount Hood, and you, as a team, you run to the coast in legs. And I hated it. So it was supposed to be this great, good time. And I was like, I don't even think I like to run. I was like, why am I running all the time? I don't even think I like to do it. So I left that, and I was like, I need to find something else, I think, because I don't think I like to do this. And so I was Googling things, and I found a Groupon to CrossFit. Never heard of it. So showed up, did my first day, did my first burpee, never heard of a burpee. And then from there, I was just kind of hooked. So it was just a total chance thing, but I think it introduced back into my life a place to push myself.
Yeah.
I was willing to push myself physically, which eventually turned into pushing myself mentally as
So
well.
when you made that revelation that you realized you didn't really like running,
Yeah.
have you ever applied that soul searching process to other aspects of life? Like I know a lot of people, they've had so much time to reflect on the things that they do day to day, and they may have like refined their process and eliminated some things that they used to do before the pandemic that they didn't actually like doing, and then when they're spending time by themselves they stop doing those things and they feel so much better. Have you found anything that you can think of in that way?
Um, well, I'm a pretty big homebody, so I stayed home quite a bit. But I would say it's really reinforced that I just really don't like to cook or make meals. As much as, a stay-at-home mom should just be in the kitchen making bread and all these things. And even with the time now that I have to do it, it's not my thing. So,
And it's totally
so
fine. Like that's the
I know.
thing. Nobody has to fit inside a box. Just because somebody else does something doesn't mean it defines you and what you do. So I
Yeah.
want to know, what are the things that you do enjoy doing? Like aside from fitness, aside from writing, what are the things that you've discovered about yourself that you do like to do?
I love to do just little fun things. And as I told my family yesterday, I like, especially when we do them all together, and just really goofy, like I've been doing this Footloose, um, recreating the Footloose opening scene with the feet. So my girlfriends were like, "Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "Well, because I don't like the baked bread." So I'm trying to find something to do, and the kids can help me pick out the matching shoes in the house that I need to find, or the clothing, just something. I guess maybe it's making memories, making moments. And I do like to draw and do creative things. Here in Portland, we have the Rose Festival every end of May, beginning of June, and it's a huge 2 week um, festival. We have several parades and carnival, and all this rose princesses. It's huge anyway, all these things which can't happen now. So they are doing a porch parade, so you can sign up and decorate your porch, and then they'll put out a map, and people can drive by the floats that are on your porch instead of a regular old parade. So my mom signed us up for that. So for the past 4 weeks, we've been preparing our porch float. So, so arts and crafts.
I like that innovation. Like, I mean, it's all about outlook. I mean, just because certain things can't happen doesn't mean other things can't happen. I mean, I've seen people organize like recipe meetups on the internet where everybody works on the same recipe and they get on the video call and they all work on it together. And so for a person that like might not like cooking, that might just be fun just to watch everybody else do it. And just so many ways of innovating and creating. I've seen the different like ninja porch drop offs, or somebody just anonymously just drops off like a bundle of goods on somebody else's front deck or front balcony or whatever it is. And it's just so cool to see people almost reinvent themselves or reinvent their processes and find new ways to
Definitely.
find the good. As far as the
Yeah.
topic of reinvention goes, have you ever found yourself in a position where you're like, okay, I'm just going to start fresh and we are going to do things a little bit new and it's a little bit scary, but we're going to give it a shot?
Yes, for myself, it's mainly you asked about connection earlier and what how I define connection. That's been a relationship wise, connecting with people has always been difficult for me. So, uh, in the last 2 years, I've really been pushing myself to try my best to connect and communicate more. And so, changing from not doing the social things to trying the social things and to actually conversing more has been huge for me. So that's been something that I've really had to, you know, when you make a change, you really have to focus on it daily or moment by moment.
Well,
And
I like that you outline that, and I think that a lot of people, a surprising amount of people, might find themselves in a place where they could relate to the previous version of you, where they're identifying something that they want to change, but it's really tough, and they don't know really how to do it. What was your like little step by step, small change by small change process like? Like if you could outline it.
um, definitely little by little for sure. And that the beginning would be the hardest, taking the first action. But I think there's first actions after the first action. Like my first step, I guess, would have been I invited a close group of friends over. This was almost 2 years ago to tell them about what I feel my purpose is with helping children and where I think that stems from. So I just invited them to the backyard and um, talked about that out loud to a small, intimate group. And then after that, I then stepped back into like a classroom setting. It was a gym classroom setting and practiced what I had been building or what I had been hoping I had been building. And then just going from there, connecting with people online as well. Um, I think Instagram, social media has been beneficial for me because I could connect behind the screen, but I tried to deepen the connection. So it started out as this is a safe place that I can connect because it's a distance, but to try and turn that into more has been a big goal. So it's been little by little with big steps where I pushed myself along the way, and it's ongoing.
Well, it's super cool to hear about that gathering that you set up with close friends and just how you spoke about like kind of putting it out into the world. There's a lot of people with big dreams in this world, where you put that out there at first, and unless you say it out loud, it doesn't really have power. Once you say it out
Mhm.
loud, it has some power, but it might just have power to you. So it's probably going to still be a struggle.
Right.
Like for myself, like most of what I do is like he does that for work. Like he watches people work out for work, or like he there's so many different things. Like people can make their income off the internet through social media posts. People can make their income off of YouTube, off of like ad revenue. It's The world is full of like unicorn jobs, like things that you would never think
Mhm.
that you could actually make a go of. And
Right.
in times like now, in times of uncertainty, it's a great attitude to have, understanding that like if you believe in yourself enough, you could probably make it happen. Like we think about Amazon and just how successful Amazon was, and there would have been a time when somebody would be like, "You bought a toaster off the internet? Off who?" Like, or like,
Right.
"What
Yeah. Yeah.
is this internet you speak of?" And then, so I think we can circle back and then understand like it
I
doesn't.
think that's sort of like, sorry,
All good. Go
kind
ahead.
of, I think there's this huge power and possibility. So I think of motivation. I mean, what makes it so that somebody can have a dream or say what they want to do that seems far out there and then they make it happen? I think there has to be this like push from purpose and this pull from possibility that helps you to move along. And I think if you can't envision a possibility, like it's out there, um, that's why I'm working so hard for it, because I know it could be a possibility, but without the purpose pushing you, driving you from behind, I think you have to have both. You have to have a push and a pull.
For sure. I
For
mean, to be able to choose to do something because it is deeply meaningful to you and not deeply meaningful to somebody else. Like for myself, I choose my career because of how much purpose it gives me to do that career, not because I
right,
saw like some fitness person do it and I thought that they must feel good. It's just like, no, it's very deeply meaningful to me, so I totally get that. And then for yourself, and like with everything that you want to be for the youth of the future, like creating grit and resilience through storytelling or through connection or any capacity in which you have the power to do so. I can already tell you have a great purpose to do so, and then it's just a matter of like taking the little steps forward. Something, and I guess as a backstory for how we essentially got connected, was our mutual friend Carl Powley. So like I
yes.
want to know what was your intro to Carl, like what, because I can sense that there's quite a story to it, or at least a really strong connection, and I think that's really cool. So if you can tell more about that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think so. I have been in CrossFit for, I'll just say 10 years, so quite a long time. And I believe I stumbled upon Carl for um, gymnastics help, uh, handstand push ups and ring dips and all that. So I think I was watching him online for tutorial stuff along that line. And then he kind of disappeared for a while off social media. And then when he picked back up, I was still following him. So I was still there listening. And it was a bit of a different, it wasn't gymnastics focused so much. And I kept listening and tuning in, and um, was intrigued by what he was saying, but also it would make me angry sometimes because I wasn't sure I agreed with what he was always saying, which, is normal. But I do know it was at the same time that I had began writing this program that I wanted to teach to children about character development. But I was just writing it. I had no plan of how to get it out into the world or what even I was doing with it, but I was writing it because I felt like it was a need. And he was talking about his thing. So this was about 2 years ago. And then I can remember one post he did where he said, if you're just following me and you're not taking any action, then you can, it was along this lines, I'm not quoting him. Then the way I heard it was, if you're following me and you're not taking any actions, then you can unfollow me. Well, I was like, what the heck? How, I'm taking actions in my book right here. I'm writing all this down. So how can you say I'm not taking action? But after a while, I wasn't. I was just putting it in my book. I was just sharing it only with myself. So I wasn't going to be able to make any impact if I didn't step up and take an actual action out into the world. And so I kept following him. And then he began this lifestyle design. And I was like, well, maybe that would help me figure out which direction I'm heading and how to clearly state what I'm doing and to figure out what I'm doing. And so I worked with him through lifestyle design. And that's when the ball got rolling, and then that's where everything's been happening from there. So I always feel fortunate that I decided to take that step to reach out to him.
I really like the analysis of like that one post and just what that post made you think, because it got me thinking. I'm like, well, heck. I mean, something that I reflected on a lot, like we can get frustrated over a lot of things, but most of our frustration is derived from the fact that we didn't do anything. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can be frustrated over something I don't have, but I never identify the fact that I didn't do anything to have that thing. A person could be frustrated that they haven't been on a podcast, but then maybe they never tried having their own podcast. Like I think there's so many common themes. I mean, everybody starts somewhere. Every trainer had a very first training session. Every
Mm-hmm.
author had a very first draft, first book, first word, first sentence. And
Mm-hmm.
it's that deep meaning in taking that very first step, just like you talk about in your journey to deepen connections in your life and open up your circle, as it were. You had a post on just one of your interactions where you traveled to go to lifestyle design, and I really liked how you told your story about traveling on planes and stuff, because I find a lot of people, it's basically we don't know who we're helping until we've helped them. And so the story of you flying on a plane, I think, is really empowering in the sense that not many people have the strength to share that story. So what was that experience like for you? And like how did it challenge you? How did it change you, etc.?
Okay. Yeah. So the lifestyle design I did with Carl was one-on-one mentoring, coaching type. And then, yes, I would travel to the Insider, which is a weekend seminar event that he holds. And yes, I don't enjoy travel, airplane travel, especially. It's very overwhelming to me. The whole going through the conveyor belts.
Oh yeah, that whole process
All
is
that,
just crazy.
and I haven't traveled alone just a handful of times. So going to the Insider was a big step in itself, and then traveling by myself to San Francisco was another big step in itself. And you're right, one thing I want to do and that I hope that children and everybody can see is that social media does present, we, as I tell my children in the classes that I've taught, that we want to share the perfect happy moments of our lives, because we want to celebrate those moments. So, of course, it's natural that that's the stuff that we want to put out there socially for everybody to see, our accomplishments, our birthdays, our celebrations, all the good stuff. But we do have to remember that that doesn't mean that that's all that there is. And sharing the struggle or the fears or doubts socially is much more difficult. But I think it's very needed because it'll help children's. I always say children, but I always think everybody. It helps us all see that connection if we can put some of it out there, so that people can connect and say, yeah, I see that, I feel that, I understand that, instead of just all the wonderful stuff that's wonderful to share.
Well,
So,
and even just the process of putting that out there, probably very similar to when you're working on a writing project and you put things on paper and you get that out of your head or like just off your mind because you have it's like saying something out loud, saying that, okay, I am going to climb a mountain, and then you tell a few people, and then it becomes like a reality. You'll climb a mountain. Just like that, we can talk about our frustrations or our weaknesses or our setbacks or the things that we're scared of, and then we put that out, even if we're journaling or if we're making it into a
mhm,
social media post, then it's like, well, that scary thing doesn't seem so scary anymore because I've introduced that thing to everybody I know. I've introduced it to the whole internet, and it's got nothing on
right,
me anymore.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that process is just
Learn-
so empowering.
Yes, if we can learn to share those, yeah, it takes a lot of power away from the fear and the doubt and the worries, because if you know you're not alone in that, and that person was able to make it to the take the next step, then I should be able to too. And to help children see that, and you know, right before the pandemic, when I was in the classrooms, when I finished a presentation, immediately when I'm packing up to leave the classroom, they want to come up to me and tell me about their worries. And that's what and they just know me for that 45 minutes or whatnot. But they should be able, they should feel the freedom and the ability and the strength to be able to do that with who they choose to share those worries with, and not keep them hidden because they feel like the process is perfect. They need to know that it's always imperfect.
That's that got me thinking. Like you left me speechless there for a second because then I'm like, well, yeah, they should be able to. I think everybody should be able to. And we should be creating space for our fellow human to be able to kind of feel like it's an ebb and flow process. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
if what we see is nothing but perfect, 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 and I talk about this all the time, I'm like, look, like, doesn't matter who we're talking about, doesn't matter if it's a pro athlete, a professor, a doctor, a nurse, anybody is having a tough day. When it comes to, like, we talked about connection and the meaning of like how meaningful it is to have that ability to connect with people on social media or in our backyard or through like a neighborhood float, anything like that. Having that out there, but it's one thing to just connect and just be like, hey, how's it going? Good, you? Good, you? And it's another thing to connect and be like, hey, I'm just going to lay it out here. I am scared of this, this, and this. I'm mad about this. When we talk about this, I get upset. There it is. And I think that's what we need more of. And you talk about empowering kids, and I think it's important to give kids those tools in their toolbox. Like, how would they have
Definitely.
those tools in their toolbox otherwise?
Right.
So,
Yeah. The uh, false impression, children falsely believe that perfect straight line. And so if they're wavering underneath that line or feeling poorly or frightened, then that possibility disappears because it's a perfect possibility and they're not perfect. So if they can understand and see that it's an imperfect process, and that when they're feeling sad, that changes. It's not there forever. Emotions always change. So they need to know that these waves and these ups and downs are a part of it. So that possibility never disappears. It just sometimes looks like it's hidden, but just wait and just keep going. It'll shine again.
So for myself, I totally resonate with what you say with wait and keep going, like trusting the process. And like I'll share with you some of my frustrations that I have. Like for me, I'm a personal trainer, and everything that I do is based on one-on-one connections, and it's based on these lasting reoccurring training sessions, or they're based on like the internet connection working. Like I'm still training some people, but then like um, my internet has to be active. Like if the Wi-Fi goes out, I'm hooped. Uh, and then the podcast is kind of reliant on like you, as a podcast host, you kind of want to see like a trend, an upward trend. You want to see uh, greater audience, or you want to see
Right.
being able to have conversations with guests and stuff. And then every single thing that you do, whether you're one-on-one training with clients, well, you're going to have some clients that have to have a operation in the hospital, or they move to a new province or a new state or a new country. Maybe like it is a reality that people get so fit and independent that they go through into another phase of their life. Some clients
Right.
become trainers one day. Like I know I used to do the fitness classes, and then I started leading the fitness classes. So it's just like there's things that are out of our control. And so from like a statistical standpoint, we'll see it go up and down, and just like same thing
Right.
with our moods. And then as such, we have to have like this some kind of faith in the process, or trust in just that things will go well. Um, what is your process with that? Like I spoke a lot, but like your turn. How do you have trust in the process? How do you take one step forward after another?
Um, that's a good question. I think it has to do with awareness, I think, an awareness of the process itself, an awareness that everything changes and you can only, and an awareness of what you're in control of. So I have to come back into myself and see if there's something that's blocking me, that's getting in my way of where I want to go. I have to be able to uh, look around, basically, and find a different way. So to know that the path is going to be not going to go my way always, that I have to adapt and look and be aware and look for different solutions and different ways to go. And it might even, and my possibility might even change. Like originally I wanted to teach a workshop style class to children in a gym, combining movement and mindset. And now it's turned into a book that I want to take into schools, and it'll probably change from there. So being able to transform and adapt and be aware, I think,
Yeah,
are big. And that comes and goes. You get stuck. You always get stuck, but
true.
if you
It's
keep
true.
looking.
Well, I mean, I had a conversation with my parents yesterday, and I was like, I'm aware that I have really good days and I have blah days. Like I have
Yeah,
days when I'm on
right.
fire, and I have days when it's just like I am slow. I am not gonna get much done. but I can account for those and I can sort of meet myself where I'm at. In the
Right.
very
And
good
it probably
days,
has to do with maybe not judging it either. Changing the way I think about judgment was huge. Having a slow day doesn't equal a bad day.
agreed. Yeah, no, I totally relate to that because I think a lot of people are finding themselves in that position where they'll be able to relate to that, and there's a lot of articles that are being released which are quite helpful in the sense that, like, hey, I mean, when it comes to fitness, it's going to be a little bit different. You're not going to be framing it with the fitness of the past. You're going to do the activity that you need in order to feel good in that day, not necessarily doing the activity that you needed to feel good in a day when your environment was different. Like, our social dynamics are different. The amount of energy that we exert on different things are different. How much we learn or where we learn it from is different. Like, people are learning more from each other than from one source because just
Hmm.
our communication is different. Where I find that I'm learning more about people that I never expected to learn more about, and it's changing my
Right.
perspective and it's changing how I see things, and it's helping me find perspective. Something that brings great meaning to the podcast for me is leaning into that perspective. I mean, you and I are different, and yet there are similarities. But through hearing your stories and your experiences, I get this broader perspective in being able to target or tackle my things that I have to overcome. And it just
Right.
compounds with time from guest to guest to guest. And then
Hmm.
from your standpoint, when I ask you different questions, you get to learn a little bit differently about yourself because you've had to think and get introspective, and it's like
True.
we're out of our comfort zone in a sense. Like, we
Yes.
started this episode as two strangers for the most part. Like, we followed each other on social media, but like this is the
Right.
first time we've communicated, and I guess that's the value in connection. We bring two new people together, and they tell things about themselves and they put it out there, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I should talk about that because I'm not feeling that is something that I've talked about every single day. Like, when somebody asks a new question, it's like, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
That's clearly, it's always a tough question for a reason. It's a tough question because we haven't spoken about it 20 times a week, or it's a tough question because we never thought about it that way. But then
Hmm.
by putting it out there, then we get to that, we almost feel equipped to handle it, or we have a new way of seeing it, or our perspective is broadened.
Right.
So
Yeah. Your your expectations have to change. I mean, you don't know what to expect, so you have to be open to more and able to expand beyond your expectations, maybe.
yeah, no, it's true. Expectations can hold us back quite a bit. Like,
Yes.
a lot of people are frustrated because they have these expectations for what life is. Like, they're like, I can't go to the music festival because that's
Right.
what summer is. But then it's like
Mhm.
there's different opportunities to do totally different things in the summer. I mean, as different regions and municipalities and countries and states and provinces reinstate different policies, it's
Mhm.
likely that different types of gatherings would be allowed or different types of events would be allowed. And it's like, so that is the summer this year. So it's like, it's not like summer is
Yeah.
canceled. You're just
No,
reinventing your summer.
it's interesting because we are limited in certain ways, but I think it's forcing us to expand in different ways. So the limitations are, yeah, helping. I've taken away the expectations, like you said, of what summer is, but now what can summer be?
Yeah.
We have to look at it and make it a new thing. I mean, yeah, expectations are gone for what you're gonna
And we
be able to
can
do.
relay that to our own journeys as well, like our expectation. Like you had the hopes of speaking to large groups, and from my perspective, I'm like, oh well, you'll still be able to speak to large groups. You get to reinvent yourself now. You get to go through that process and
Right.
find the new ways, find the things that suit you, that feel right, that where you get to be yourself, but be yourself in the biggest, loudest way. Like from my perspective, it's like this is a great time for me because I've just gone through so much reinventing of myself. Like I wasn't always a trainer, so I had to reinvent myself to go into that, and
Mhm.
I wasn't always doing a podcast, so I kind of had to reinvent myself to go into that. And like, of course, like the first one that was tough, and like for the first 20 episodes, I was a little rusty, and then you get that practice, and then I lots of room for improvement still, but it's I have that process, and I think okay, like I'm trusting in my purpose in doing this, and I'm just going
Right.
to keep putting in that work, no matter whether it gets 10 listens, 500 listens, 1,000 listens. It is
Yeah.
meaningful to me, and so I will put in the work, and I see that in your author journey, putting in that work and trusting that process. But I want to hold you accountable to your goals. So what's a big goal that you have? Because then if we put it out there into the world, wouldn't it be cool to see that happen and reflect on it years later?
Yeah. I would say my like if I don't know how big you want to go, but my my what I would love to see is character development, learning about the process of growth, of a growth mindset to become in schools and for children more of a focus and move away from uh, test scores so much and change what we're focusing on. Because when I think of my own children, when they leave from here, I, as a parent, I would feel most comfortable or at ease if I know that my children have the ability to keep going, to adapt, to problem solve, as opposed to being on the honor roll. You know, we have to change what we're celebrating, maybe what we're focusing on. When I was teaching, you see what the children are interested in during free time, and they'll build things or paint things or read or whatever it is that is they're drawn to. And then when the free time's over, we have them clean it up and put it away. But we didn't celebrate what they spent that 25 minutes building. That, you know, they don't want to knock down that block structure they've built because they just created that. And so we would take pictures of our creations because we couldn't save them all. There's not enough room in the classroom. But if you worked hard on that and that has some meaning to you and it's amazing, this was back in the day where I had to develop the film, but we'd take a picture of it, develop it, and put the picture up on the wall. So maybe you didn't do so well in math that day, but man, that block structure you built was amazing. And you took so much time with it and you put so much effort into it. That's what we need to be focusing on, as opposed to you have to reach X, Y, and Z benchmark. Because if you can leave this classroom with a feeling of, I put this effort in to make this and it happened, then you can go out and do that wherever you want to do it in the world. But if we just focus on the benchmarks they can't meet and we label them with not quite good enough, they don't see the process. They can't see the growth. They can't feel the growth. So somehow I want to put that back in. to make it more visible for children.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's important, and especially during this time, we got people that feel they feel like they lost something because of how the dynamics of a graduation changed, or because so much relies on marks, and like in university and college settings too, like a lot of things have changed there, and so much of just purpose is tied or correlated to this number on a piece of paper. And
Mhm.
as important as that is, there is so much more. I mean, people are making memories and connecting with relatives that they would have never otherwise connected with, just because the
Uh,
social dynamics have changed, and people are learning that grit. Like there's a lot of people who are going to come out of a situation like this changed forever in a good way, because
yeah,
all of their expectations were thrown out the window, and they
yeah,
were surrounded by people who had the capabilities to show them their inner strength, like whether it be a family that is self isolating together, and then it's like somebody had a bad day, well, they got to lean on a parent or a sibling, or maybe it's like someone that lives on their own, but then they learned how to reach out to a friend and be like, hey, having a bad day, I need to pick me up, or um, maybe people learned the value, like if anything else, I've definitely learned the value of when you go to the grocery store for your necessities, the value of a smile. Like you start to really feel how
yes.
impactful a
Mm,
smile
little things.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes, I feel that, and that feels hopeful to me. Um, because yeah, the grades for now are gone, but there's huge lessons that we can help each other learn from this if we pay attention. Yeah.
And then if we look at at life just as a whole, I've never had a conversation with anybody who, like 10 years after post secondary or 10 years after grade 7 or grade 12, they were like, oh man, if anything mattered, it was certainly the grades that I got on my final. Like, they're talking about
Yeah.
someone that they met, or they're talking about
Mhm.
an experience that they had that made them choose a certain career, or they're talking about like a time when
Yep.
they had a near death experience and it gave them this great sense of purpose for something very specific. And it's never been about grades. As much as that can
Right.
help, it's like a stepping stone. That's like a tiny, tiny step in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that people find their ways to find their purpose and find the value in the
Mhm.
things that we do have control of.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
So, in the last 7 days, what is one thing that has brought you the most joy?
In the last 7 days. Um, I have to say, just being together. Um, nobody's rushing off from just my household here. Nobody is has to rush off and get anywhere. So we have time to just be and to do the slower down things together. Um, I think those are the moments that I am really enjoying.
I think,
Um,
yeah, like that's so cool to reflect on, because then we have to wonder, like, how many times did we take those things for granted, or how many times did we not like mandate that as a core value, or as like a non-negotiable, as like, okay, like this has to happen, like these other things they can wait, because this
yeah,
thing that brings me joy is actually probably one of the more important things in life. And
yeah.
so I
I
like
also
that
have to
people,
say,
yeah.
I also been kind of amazed, that's in the household here, but I also have my parents who are in their 80s, and watching them, I can't go in their house but they live in town with us. So we have visited in the backyard from a safe distance a few times, but watching them order online groceries, figuring out that system, watching them. figure out ways that to keep themselves busy. My dad did his first, doctor's appointment over the phone. Watching them, in their 80s adapting is also, I feel proud about it. I'm like, okay, that's how we're going to do it, you know.
Absolutely. Like,
So,
it's super cool to see how fast everybody is learning to reinvent themselves in the sense of, oh, we're going to communicate with a video call, or oh, we are going to
yeah, these
use
are
like
the things that
e-commerce.
before
Yeah.
this, yeah, before this, you were like, no, I don't have to do that. I'm never going to do that. And then, well, now you can do it. Look at that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
yeah.
true. So, if you were going to give one piece of advice on how to live your life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say in the most authentic way to live it without labels on yourself and without labels on others, um, which is a whole, which is difficult because the words pop into your mind, especially. Um, the other day, my husband said, "Are you tired?" Because I had my head down on the table, and I was like, just tired of the own words that are running through my head, the narrative, the labels of what I can and can't do, and that I have to address them as they come up. So if you can, I think maybe you always hear the labels in some way in your narrative or in your own story, but if you can take them away and go beyond them, that's huge because the labels stop you. Labels tell you what you can and can't do. And labels for others, labels are judgments, I think. Labels and judgments go hand in hand. So I think if you're aware of those two things and you're always working on going past them, that'll help that'll help you get where you wish to go.
You put it really well. And I think that's important for everybody. And I think it's just like how we talked about different people at different stages in our life. I think we can't help it. We're often going to find ourselves putting labels on ourselves, no matter how practiced we are. But that
Mm-hmm.
awareness piece of putting that on the table, like, hey, let's work on not doing that, stepping back from that, and empowering
Yeah.
ourselves a bit more can be a really good sentiment. But
Yes. I always say I'm not a dog person. I don't know. I always say that or feel that or think that, but I have a dog. So,
that's so
so I'm
funny.
like, why am I saying I'm not a dog person? I have a dog and I love my dog. So I don't know. That's not, I don't know. That just always pops into my head. Like, that is so untrue, but I always say that.
Yeah, no, I can relate. I say often that I'm more of a dog person than a cat person, but I've spent a lot of quality time with a lot of different cats in the world. So it's
Exactly.
we get our own inner monologue and it shapes things. But essentially, that basically wraps it up for today. So I'd like to thank you for joining me on the show.
Well, yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Your challenge for today's episode is to unleash your creative side. Think of some way that you're going to be creative, whether you do a dance, whether you write something, paint something, draw something, build something, and post about it in the page at The Lifestyle Chase on Instagram and hold yourself accountable. Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out past episodes of The Lifestyle Chase at thelifestylechase.podbean.com, and we will catch you next time. See ya.